And joining us now, Mazen Chouaib, Senior Consultant and Managing Director of Canadian Leaders in International Consulting, CLIC. And he's also former Executive Director of the National Council on Canada-Arab Relations. And it's good to have you here in the studio.
Thanks for having me. Great. It's good to see you.
Good. You too. Let's focus on this Libya issue starting here. Prior to military action, what kind of conversation was going on in the Arab world as to what do we do about Gadhafi?
Well, definitely Gadhafi did not leave many friends in the Arab world in terms of the leadership of the Arab world, but also on the street of the Arab world. There was quite a bit of concern and fear on the status of people when the Arab street, I can call it now the Arab street again, started seeing the images coming out of Libya, the massacres, the killing, and the use of mercenaries in Libya to attack their own people. So the street was pretty much on side, supporting the opposition, supporting the rebels in Libya to take on the Muammar Gadhafi and his people. And
the reaction to the airstrikes, you think, has been in the main positive so far from much of the Arab world?
What I've seen in terms of discussions in the Arab world and my discussions with people in the Middle East, it's positive because there are two views in the Middle East right now. One is that there are certain regimes that can fall because of the public pressure, the street pressure will fall. But there are those, and at one time we thought the majority would have been on that other side of it, and those will not go without a big fight, would not go without destroying their own country in order to remain in power. So Muammar Gadhafi has always been known to be of that kind, and they don't see any other option.
Okay, because obviously for the last 10 years we have been conditioned to think American planes in the sky over Arab/Muslim country equals bad. But you're not saying that.
No, I'm not, because there's one key important factor in this, and that is this is a United Nations military action.
Gotcha.
It's not an American or coalition of the willing as we saw in Iraq. And this is going to be the case throughout the region. And I think President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton were very smart in playing it really low-key and making sure that the Arabs were on side first, plus the rest of the international community, before they committed themselves to a military action in Libya.
I guess for the record, Afghanistan was a UN mission as well, but it's been going on for a very long time.
That's right, but this is why Canada is involved in Afghanistan and not involved in Iraq, for example.
Gotcha. Here's from today's New York Times, Mazen. On Sunday, a vital Arab participant in the agreement expressed unhappiness with the way the strikes were unfolding. The Secretary General of the Arab League, Amr Moussa, told Egyptian state media that he was calling for an emergency League meeting to discuss the situation in the Arab world, and particularly to discuss the killing of civilians in Allied attacks in Libya. But on Monday, Mr. Moussa spoke of the Allied actions in more measured tones, saying, quote, "We respect the Security Council's resolution and we have no conflict with the resolution, especially as it confirms that there is no invasion or occupation of Libyan territory." Mixed messages coming out of the Arab League?
Of course. It's the Arab League. And the Arab League represents the governments, represents a group of monarchs and dictatorships, and hopefully soon there will be more democratic countries. But Amr Moussa is playing both sides in a way. He's on the one hand also running for office in his country, and he has to appear that he does not want to see Arab blood being spilled in Libya, or Libyan blood being spilled by an Arab League-supported resolution, an Arab League-supported attack. So he has to be very careful. But on the other hand, I think he probably realized that he's probably being on the wrong side of history here. And I'm sure the Americans called him and said, "What are you doing? What are you trying to do?" So I think he's just playing for his own political audience, his own audience, and probably some of the Arab governments called him and said, what's going on? You have to be careful how you play this game.
All politics is local. Doesn't matter what you're running for.
Of course.
You know Thabit Abdullah from York University, I suspect. He was on the program in that chair last month, suggesting that rather than having Western powers enforce a no-fly zone, Egypt's military and the military from other Arab states would be better politically equipped to do that job. It doesn't seem as if that option has been pursued here. Why not?
Maybe 3 months ago, he was right. I don't think right now you will find many Arab governments able or interested in playing taking part in a military action outside of their own areas, except for what we're seeing in Bahrain, which is a totally different story. But Egypt is right now focused and concentrating on its own issues, and these are major issues. The Egyptian military just disbanded a couple of weeks ago the security apparatus in Egypt. They don't have enough, I don't think they have enough hardware and enough people to protect their own country, their own borders.
Despite their primacy in the Arab world, they're not in the business of going over the border yet.
No, I don't think so. And all these Arab governments, if you look at them for the last 20 years, have been good at having military that can take care of their own people, but they're not strong enough to go outside of their own borders. So on one hand, they have militaries, but I don't think any one of them would be interested right now to be seen as bombing. But on the other hand, we see Qatar starting to say that they may play a role in this because it's under international resolution, international United Nations resolution. So they're implicated, but I don't know if hardware-wise or military-wise they would be interested or able at this stage to play a role.
We've known for a long time that there's a difference between what the rulers of these Arab countries feel and what their people feel.
The gap is huge.
The gap has always been huge. I wonder, do you think on the Libyan adventure it's still huge?
I think it's not that big, but everybody hates Gadhafi. I mean, the Arab League, I remember watching it one time, and there was this big spat between Muammar Gadhafi and the King of Saudi Arabia, and they had to shut down the TV because it was broadcast. There's no, love lost here between Arab governments because Muammar Gadhafi played politics or actually supported a lot of organizations, terrorist organizations and otherwise, in these countries. And he tried to undermine these leaders. So there won't be anybody crying over his demise in the leadership of the Arab countries. But I don't think they want to see it happen this way, on the other hand, because that gives ideas about how they will have to go also.
Well, that's it,
so there's a fear in the Arab governments. As much as they hate him, I don't think they feel good about the way he's going, because that can give ideas about how they may end up going down the road.
We tend to report on these things as very black and white, right? Gadhafi bad, rebels good.
Yeah.
Do you have a good understanding in your own head of who these rebels are and whether they are, they're obviously not Thomas Jefferson riding in on a white horse, but are they Democrats?
I don't think you can say at this point in time. I think it's such a chaotic place, such a difficult environment in Libya right now. But Libya also has been closed off for many years. We didn't know much about Libya except what we hear from people coming to Canada, for example, to study, or people traveling in the Middle East. But Libya has all kinds of people in it. It has mercenaries. It had taken on all the bad people that you can think of from the rest of the Middle East, those who refused to abdicate to the leaders. But anyways, I think it's a mishmash of many things. But Libya, at the bottom of it, is a tribal society. So people's natural inclination is to fall back to that tribal system. And I think this is what we'll start seeing. Even in the conversations that Saif al-Islam, the son of Muammar Gadhafi, was talking about the tribal wars or the civil wars that might happen in reference to the divisions between the tribes that support them and the tribes that don't support them.
A couple of questions on Canada. How do you feel about the fact this country is participating?
I think it's the right thing to do. I think many Canadian Arabs and many Libyan Canadians would support it, and Canadians in general would support this because it's under international law. And also it's important for us to remember that Canada was the country that pushed the right to protect in the United Nations. And this is what Canada is playing a role right now to protect the civilians in Libya, and I think it's a good role. My concern is that Canada is not saying that we're abiding by right to protect a mantra or the resolution on that issue. That concerns me, but I'm glad because it's under international law, under the United Nations, and not a coalition of the willing that they were talking about.
Well, let's get more specific. Here's what the Prime Minister of the country did say. He said, I'm going to say aloud what nobody else is saying, which is, yes, we've been given the green light by the United Nations to protect innocent civilians in this, but really at the end of the day, this is about getting rid of Gadhafi. Now, is that,
sure.
Do you think Canada should be in the business of doing that?
I think this is a statement that definitely will make a lot of Canadians uncomfortable. Are we in the business of getting rid of tyrants and leaders in other countries? But the fact is, I think it's semantics at this point in time, because what we're looking at is that a leader that is killing his own people. And peaceful demonstrators were shot and killed in the streets. So he has lost, as maybe I'm using the words of President Obama, he lost the legitimacy to rule his own people and to protect his own people. So there are questions, and this is why international law is so important. This is and creating that framework under the right to protect, to deny ambitious American leaders or otherwise to say we are going to get rid of that leader because we don't like him, or get rid of that person because we don't like him. And this is what we saw, unfortunately, in the case of Iraq.
Let me ask you about Russia, because I think they surprised a lot of people by not using their veto, and they allowed the resolution to go forward. Vladimir Putin, the prime minister, said of the airstrikes, quote, "In general, it reminds me of a medieval call for a crusade." How will that language and that word in particular resonate in the Arab street?
I think a lot of these leaders who use this term under the current circumstances, and that is try to conjure up all these images from the past, will fail to do any real, to get any support on the street, or to feel, to play it in a way that will cause damage on the street. I don't think people buy it. They realize what is going on. And I think the last 2 months have demonstrated that, as we talked about, the gap between leaders and the people on the street are so wide. A lot of people question actually whether these governments, even if Muammar Gadhafi was anti-American in essence, a lot of people question whether these leaders truly care about their own people, because WikiLeaks has demonstrated put a lot of evidence out there about the relationships between these Arab governments, who on the one hand say, this is the West, this is the Crusaders, these are the people that are coming to take your wealth. And on the other hand, they're telling them where to bomb and telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And so.
Let me ask you one last thing, and that's about China. China has also been critical of the attacks, although China, again, did not use its veto and allowed the resolution to go forward. We have talked about how mistrustful some Arab countries can be when they see Western planes in the skies. How willing do you think Arabs are in general to trust emerging powers, such as China, when it comes to defending Arab interests?
Again, are they defending their own interests in the Arab region, or are they defending the Arab people's interest? And this is clear that nobody sees China as the great democratic country
defending Arab interests.
How can they do that? Everybody respects China because of the economic power it's become, and all the economic links between China and the Middle East. But in terms of them defending the rights of people to demonstrate, the rights of people to see a democratic system, democratic country, accession of peaceful transition of governments and power, China is not the symbol of that. So I don't see those two. And China and Russia have their own politics back home that they have to play to. It's all local, right? So they don't want to encourage people in their own backyard to start demonstrating and causing dissent.
Gotcha. Mazen, thanks for this tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mazen Chouaib, Managing Director, Canadian Leaders in International Consulting. Click.